Hi there, welcome back to Chapter 37 of Defender of Dirt. Now it's time for audience comments and questions, Mrs. Lindsay announced. Then we'll take a vote to see whether the neighborhood feels any more action needs to be taken on these complaints. Mr. Franklin, the jack-in-the-box with a clipboard, jumped up again and started to speak, but Mrs. Lindsay interrupted him. No, Mr. Franklin, I ask the audience. We take turns and play nicely with others here at the Hawthorne Hill Association, she joked, and a few people clapped again. Mr. Franklin sat down, fuming. A few people wearing Clean Team stickers repeated Mr. Lawhorn's points. Mrs. Franklin stood up and said she didn't feel it was safe for children to have a beehive in the neighborhood. Many more people said nice things about Bill and Aunt Yuki. When Mrs. Lindsay asked for any more comments before the vote, a tiny white-haired woman in the back stood up and asked for the microphone. She wanted to be sure everyone heard her, she said. Of course, Mrs. Murphy, said Mrs. Lindsay, as she hurried over with the mic. The children have done a wonderful job, Mrs. Murphy announced, giving us a smile I hadn't expected because she started out looking very stern. But you all should hear from the old folks too. The oldest folks, I should think. I am 96. I've been living in this neighborhood longer than the Franklins and the Lawhorns have been alive. She paused and smiled at us again. I remember the old times when Hawthorne Hill was considered the edge of town. There was a real farm here, too, the old Bailey farm. The Baileys had livestock. Chickens were always about. I noticed Mr. Franklin polishing his glasses, probably so he wouldn't have to look at her. If you ask me, gardens are good for the neighborhood. We need more. People nowadays act like food just magically shows up on the store shelf. Most wouldn't know how to treat a chicken or a bee. That's sad and dangerous for our future, too. She looked all around the room slowly. Everybody was silent except for Summer. So, Mr. Bill Weatherby and Mrs. Yukimeda, my question for you is, when are you going to get some ducks and maybe a goat or two? Bill and Aunt Yuki smiled, and almost everybody laughed. You can guess who didn't. Then Mrs. Murphy turned toward the Franklin Lawhorn part of the room. And my question for the Clean Team group is... She paused, and the room got quiet again. I'm an early riser, a very early riser. I see lots of things that other people are sleeping through. Sunrise, early birds, cloud formations, and such. What I want to know is, what is in those containers I sometimes see Mr. Lawhorn empty down the storm drain in the wee hours of the morning? Suddenly, the room was full of stirring and muttering and people shifting in their chairs. Mr. Lawhorn and Mr. Franklin leaned their heads together over Mr. Franklin's clipboard, pretending to jot something down. Mrs. Lindsay looked flustered. She even blushed and stammered, thank you, Mrs. Murphy, but I don't think we can address a question like that at this moment. Please speak with me after the meeting. I certainly will, thank you, Mrs. Murphy declared.